Welcome to our video this week in our show host series. I'm Christine, founder of Worthful Media, and I just am fresh back from a client's event that I was at this week in California. It's a private summit for marketing executives, and I was reminded yet again that there are some really powerful things that happen when you share your media or your voice or your wisdom or your expertise in front of a live audience. So I'm going to share in today's video some tips that apply to you as a podcast host that maybe haven't crossed your mind, even if you've done a lot of public speaking. And I'm going to give you some ideas about how you can connect to the magic of in-person events while being a show host for your episodes and for some of your bigger brand building, because there is something very cool that happens in person that it's hard to replicate when you are doing everything remotely. Not that remote is bad, but there is a different magic and quality and connection that happens in person. So I wasn't at a podcast event. I was at an event that had a main stage with programming and speakers and performers, but it was part of a bigger summit that had breakouts and parties and workouts and think tanks and things like that. I was helping with all the programming on the main stage, which means like the speakers and the rehearsals and the green room and the backstage. And so it was a different environment than just like a podcast event, but I have done so much producing of so much media that I see the through line, whether it's a podcast episode, whether it's a live event, whether people are speaking on stage or doing a Q&A or recording an episode, whether they have someone else they're talking to or they're talking, just straight to the audience. I see the through line. So that's what I'm going to share with you. All right, let's talk about one of the very best things that can possibly happen when you're in front of a live audience as a podcast host. So think about this as something you can take advantage of, whether you record episodes in front of a live audience at an event. This is becoming more and more popular, where if there's already a big event happening with a lot of people gathering, oftentimes podcast hosts are invited to come record an episode live at the event in front of an audience that then gets published out to their show. This could work for an event you're hosting. This could work in an event that you are collaborating with or you are invited to come be a part of. So it doesn't have to just be live events that you're hosting. It could be. That's really powerful and an awesome idea to develop super fans within the audience and also share the experience of your live event with your podcast audience. But the more important thing to realize is whether or not you're recording episodes for your show because you're in an event that you're hosting or someone else is hosting, or you're a guest host of a conversation that gets put on someone else's show, all of this is relevant. When you're in front of a live audience, you get feedback that you never get when you're recording to a camera or to a microphone in a studio or in your home office, right? Like you actually get to see in real time your audience's reaction to your episode, to your voice, to your ideas, to your cadence, to your conversation style, or to your presentation. And that is invaluable. Every podcast host on planet Earth would love to be able to see the reactions and get the feedback that you get in front of a live audience every time they recorded, but that's not really how it works. So if you ever have the chance to record live episodes in front of an audience, do it, because you will get so much valuable feedback from not only the expressions you see on people's faces, the energy in the room, when people laugh, when people cry, when people tune out or check their phone, when people applaud or cheer. That's the kind of feedback you can't get when you're just by yourself or with a producer or with a guest in a studio. You can get really good insight from asking the producer, hey, how was that episode? Or, if there are some other people who came with your guest who maybe were sitting and listening in, like that's a great way to get feedback. But the chances are they're not your core target audience. So when you have the opportunity to be at a live event and record an episode in front of real people, you get amazing feedback. And it can happen during the episode. It can also happen at the end when people cheer and clap, and you get to feel the energy of the impact that your conversations and your episodes have. It's a real boost, and it's so cool to see. And no matter how many speaking engagements you've done and how many times you've had conversations videoed or recorded, it doesn't get old to hear people's applause and their appreciation and their connection to what you're saying. So that is takeaway number one from being at a live event. Every time you get the chance to share what you share on your podcast at live events, it's an excellent chance to get real-time feedback from real people. And of course, if people come up to you after you speak or after you share the conversation, that's also an amazing time for feedback. So if I were you, the next time you go to an event where you're being featured on stage, whether recorded or not, I would absolutely make time to connect with people after and hear their feedback about what you say. Okay, point number 2 that I take away from going to live events and why they're so valuable for podcast hosts to be in person with people is that if you've never had the experience of sitting down with a guest in person to record an episode, and you've only ever done it remotely, like over Riverside or Squadcast or Zoom, there is something that happens to your connection with the person you're talking to. It's very hard to explain unless you've experienced it, but I'll try. I have sat in on literally hundreds of podcast episode recordings in studio, and I have also watched many, many, many recordings that happened remotely where, nobody was in person. And the difference is that when you're in person with your guest or your guests or your co-host, you can connect with a focus and an intimacy that's very rare these days. Think about it. When's the last time you had an opportunity to have a 30 to 45 to 60-minute conversation with someone about something meaningful and important to both of you where you weren't distracted? Like, podcast episodes can literally be better than a first date as far as connection and focus goes, because you on purpose put your phones away, turn off your notifications. Like, you don't want any of that picked up in the recording. And so you actually are more focused than you would be at a restaurant or at any other type of conversation. And I say a first date because it's a fun example, but it really is an incredible opportunity, especially in our lifestyles today, to actually connect with someone very deeply and focused. And the relationship building that provides is amazing. I think because technology has made our lives so convenient to connect without being in the same room, we have kind of become used to that, which is terribly convenient and very useful. But what happens when we actually connect face to face again with humans and feel their energy and again see their responses in real time and are focused with each other is unrepeatable digitally. And if you've never done that, I highly recommend recording some episodes in person, whether you book studio time at a podcast studio or you invite someone to, come to your home because they're a local guest, or you meet up at an event you're both going to and you take time to record an episode. People record podcast episodes all the time in their hotel rooms at live events when they and their guest are both in the same place. Hotel rooms can have great podcast acoustics because they're usually small and carpeted. So that's an opportunity I want you to think about really seriously. If you've never recorded episodes in person with a guest, or it's been a long time, make the effort and reconnect to that opportunity, because the quality of conversation, the quality of relationship you'll develop, especially after the conversation ends and you're kind of comparing notes and debriefing and talking more about what you were just talking about, it's sort of unparalleled. And that is another reminder I had at this live event, just walking through the halls of this beautiful hotel during the, break times and seeing so many people connecting with each other and having meaningful conversations, on little couches and in corners of the hallway and while they were getting a snack or walking to lunch. We are built to do that. And until we're back in person with each other, it's hard to remember. But a quality, 30 minutes with someone in person can be way more fruitful for all the reasons you'd like it to be than, several Zoom calls. So those are some of my takeaways. I could go on and on. I mean, there are other ways to get in front of a live studio audience that you don't need to be at a big event. You can come to a studio that has seating capacity for a live audience to be there during your podcast recording at the studio. We've done that at our studio. We've had clients come in and record a podcast episode where they have a live audience and they bring up people from the audience and they answer questions and kind of do live coaching. It doesn't have to be a ton of people. people, even 20 people, is a really cool audience to record an episode with. But I want you to start to think creatively if you've never done this before. The list goes on, because if, let's say you have a book coming out and you're going to go on a little book tour, maybe even just like 2 or 3 cities, and you're going to, have little book events at bookstores. There are so many awesome bookstores that will host and record your, conversation around your book, and you can invite a great friend to come interview you, and people absolutely love that. And it's such a cool way to connect with your audience. You don't have to have a book coming out to do that. Sometimes podcast hosts just go on tour and will hit a few cities that they know they have a lot of listeners in, and just have a special event for the evening and invite people to come while they record an episode. And they usually invite a special guest to like moderate a conversation with them. Those are some of the coolest ways to find out who your audience is, connect with them in real time, get their feedback. And it's invaluable for you as a show host to experience what your audience sees in you and why they value your show. So we're going to wrap it there for today. I just wanted to give you some inspiration and some encouragement to maybe, especially if you kind of needed a spark or you felt the need to do something different to kind of reconnect to your show's purpose. Try being in front of real people in person. Please subscribe to the channel. We are bringing you weekly videos with more show host tips. Of course, leave a comment if you have questions or other topics you want us to cover, and we'll see you next time.